Hey everybody, and welcome back. Africa is frequently portrayed negatively in the media, with reports often focusing on issues like famine and conflicts. In this series, we're diving deep into why Africa doesn't get the attention it deserves. Buckle up, friends. It's going to be a bumpy but hopefully eye-opening ride. When was the last time you saw a positive news story about Africa? Think about it for a moment. How often do you come across stories that highlight the beauty, the joy, and the progress happening across this vast continent? It's like the entire continent is stuck in a loop of grim headlines. War, famine, disease, these are the narratives that dominate the airwaves and the front pages. It's as if the media has decided that Africa is a monolith of misery. They've got their share of challenges, that's for sure. But who doesn't? Every continent, every country faces its own set of difficulties. The difference is, for Africa, these challenges are often the only stories told. But focusing solely on the negative paints a distorted picture of a vibrant, diverse continent with 54 countries and over 1.4 billion people. Each country has its own unique culture, language, and history. From the bustling markets of Lagos to the serene landscapes of the Serengeti, Africa is a tapestry of experiences. Africa is a land of innovation, creativity, and yes, even booming economies. Did you know that some of the world's fastest-growing economies are in Africa? Countries like Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Ghana are making significant strides in technology, infrastructure, and education. But you wouldn't know it from the way the media portrays Africa. The images are often outdated, the stories one-dimensional. This misrepresentation does a disservice not just to Africa, but to the world, which misses out on the richness and diversity of African life. This constant barrage of negativity has real consequences. It shapes perceptions, both within and outside the continent. It affects how Africans see themselves and how the world sees Africa. It can even influence policy decisions and international relations. It feeds into tired stereotypes, discourages investment, and exhausts Africans who are tired of being treated like a charity case. Imagine being an entrepreneur with a groundbreaking idea, only to be met with skepticism because of where you're from. We need nuanced, balanced reporting that showcases the full spectrum of African experiences, stories of triumph, innovation, and everyday life. Stories that reflect the true spirit of Africa. So, the next time you see a story about Africa, ask yourself, is this the whole story or just the easiest one to tell? Challenge the narrative. Seek out the untold stories. Because Africa is more than just a headline, it's a continent full of life, love, and limitless potential. You can't talk about Africa's current state without addressing the colonizer in the room. For centuries, European powers exploited Africa, leaving a legacy of instability and inequality. Imagine someone waltzing into your house, taking all your stuff, drawing arbitrary lines on your floor, and saying, "Now you guys figure out how to live together peacefully." They plundered their resources, disrupted their governance, and pitted ethnic groups against each other. Now, I'm not saying colonialism is the root of all of Africa's problems, but it's like trying to run a marathon with a 50-pound weight strapped to your back. It's time to move beyond apologies and start talking about reparations, baby. Let's be real, folks, the world runs on money. And when it comes to global economic priorities, Africa often gets relegated to the back burner. For starters, the global economic system is rigged against developing countries, especially those in Africa. They're often stuck exporting raw materials at low prices, only to buy back finished products at exorbitant rates. Then there's the issue of debt. Many African countries are saddled with crippling debt burdens, thanks to predatory lending practices. This debt makes it nearly impossible to invest in essential services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. And let's not forget about the lack of access to global markets. We need a fairer global economic system that prioritizes sustainable development, equitable trade practices, and responsible investment in Africa's vast potential. We need to stop treating Africa like a charity case and start seeing it as a valuable economic partner. In the high-stakes game of geopolitics, Africa often finds itself on the sidelines. While global powers are busy flexing their muscles in other regions, Africa is often seen as a strategic afterthought. Now, some might argue that this is a good thing, but being ignored on the world stage has its downsides. When Africa isn't considered a major player, its concerns are often overlooked. Its voice is diminished in international forums. Africa is home to some of the world's fastest-growing economies, a young and vibrant population, and abundant natural resources. We need to change the narrative. Africa needs to be seen as a valuable partner, not just a recipient of aid. The world can't afford to ignore Africa any longer. Let's talk about the white savior complex in the room. For decades, Africa has been bombarded with aid, often with good intentions but questionable results. Don't get me wrong, aid can be a lifeline in times of crisis, but when it becomes a crutch, it can hinder long-term development and create a cycle of dependency. Constant handouts can undermine local economies, stifle innovation, and foster corruption. We need to move away from this outdated model of aid and towards a more sustainable approach that empowers African nations to build their own futures. It's time to ditch the help me narrative and embrace a partnership based on mutual respect and shared prosperity. Let's face it, folks, we humans are a self-centered bunch. We tend to care about things that are close to home, both geographically and culturally. And unfortunately for Africa, it often feels like a world away. This distance and unfamiliarity breed indifference. We need more African voices in the media, more African stories being told, and more opportunities for people to experience Africa firsthand. We need to break down the stereotypes and misconceptions that prevent people from seeing Africa for what it truly is, a continent of incredible diversity, resilience, and potential. Now, before we go pointing fingers outward, let's take a look in the mirror. Africa faces its fair share of internal challenges that contribute to its negative portrayal in the media and the lack of attention it receives on the global stage. We're talking about issues like corruption, poor governance, ethnic conflicts, and a lack of accountability. These problems are real, they're serious, and they're holding Africa back from reaching its full potential. We need to demand better from our leaders and hold them accountable for their actions. It's essential if we want to create a brighter future for Africa. Alright, let's address the giraffe on the savannah. Stereotypes about Africa are as common as flies at a picnic, and just as annoying. First up, the whole Africa is a country thing. Africa is a continent with 54 diverse countries, each with its own unique cultures, languages, and histories. Then there's the myth that everyone in Africa lives in mud huts and hunts lions for dinner. Africa is also home to bustling megacities, cutting-edge technology, and a thriving creative scene. And let's not forget about the stereotype of the noble savage, the romanticized image of Africans as simple spiritual beings living in harmony with nature. These stereotypes are not harmless. They perpetuate ignorance, fuel prejudice, and prevent people from seeing the true beauty and potential of Africa. It's time to ditch the single story and embrace the multifaceted reality of this amazing continent. Look, I get it, the world is a busy place. There's always something vying for our attention: celebrity scandals, political dramas, the latest viral cat video. With so much going on, it's easy for Africa to get lost in the shuffle. When a war breaks out in Europe, it dominates headlines for weeks. When a natural disaster strikes a developed nation, the world rallies to provide aid. But when similar events happen in Africa, they often barely register a blip on the global radar. The challenges facing Africa, poverty, inequality, climate change, are global challenges. We need to be more mindful of our attention spans. We need to be more intentional about seeking out diverse perspectives and engaging with issues that matter, even when they feel far away. Let's be real, most of us probably learned more about ancient Egypt than we did about the entire history of sub-Saharan Africa, and that's a problem. When we're not taught about Africa's rich history, vibrant cultures, and significant contributions to the world, it's easy to buy into the narrative that Africa is a continent defined by poverty, conflict, and dependence. The global education system has failed to adequately represent the diversity and richness of African experiences. This lack of knowledge and understanding perpetuates stereotypes, fuels prejudice, and limits our ability to engage with Africa in meaningful ways. We need to decolonize our curriculum and make sure that African history and current affairs are given the attention they deserve. By learning about Africa, we can challenge our own biases, broaden our perspectives, and become more informed and engaged global citizens. So, there you have it, a glimpse into the complex web of reasons why Africa often gets overlooked. Think of it as a call to action, a call to pay attention, to challenge your assumptions, and to engage with Africa in all its complexity and beauty. Because when Africa thrives, the world thrives.